In recent years, a series of strange headlines have spread across the internet. Some of them sound like science fiction, while others are dressed up as cutting-edge breakthroughs in medicine and technology. Stories of babies in pods, of robotic mothers with artificial wombs, of labs where parents might someday order children with traits chosen from a genetic menu. Much of this news is sensationalized, exaggerated, or even fabricated. But behind the hype lies something undeniable. Real science is pushing the boundaries of human reproduction in ways that only a few decades ago seemed impossible. Artificial wombs are no longer the stuff of fantasy. Cloning extinct species is being seriously pursued, and genetic editing of embryos has already been attempted. At the same time, our world is facing a looming crisis: the slow, relentless decline of human birth rates. Entire nations are struggling with collapsing fertility. Governments are desperate for solutions. And in the shadows, some whisper about another layer to this mystery, a layer that connects to alien abductions, to reports of hybrid children, and to programs of genetic harvesting that may stretch far beyond human science. So, let's step into this story. Let's peel back the layers: the science, the speculation, and the unexplained. Because maybe the truth behind the baby pod headlines is stranger than anything we can imagine. Back in 2017, researchers at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia unveiled something remarkable. They called it the biobag. It looked like a giant, clear plastic pouch filled with fluid. Inside, premature lamb fetuses floated, connected by tubes that carried oxygen and nutrients. These lambs survived and continued developing normally for weeks. Their lungs matured. Their brains grew. They opened their eyes. This was no science fiction mock-up. It was real. A proof of concept that a premature mammal could be supported outside the womb in a system designed to mimic the amniotic environment. Across the ocean in Barcelona, another group of scientists at BC Natal has been developing an artificial placenta system. Their goal is the same: to create a bridge for babies born too soon. In Japan, researchers have experimented for decades with extrauterine incubation of goat fetuses. And in Israel, at the Weizmann Institute, scientists have gone further. They've grown mouse embryo-like structures from stem cells alone, no sperm or egg required. These embryos formed beating hearts and early brains, all outside a mother's womb. The term for this is ectogenesis, the development of an embryo entirely outside the body. For now, it's confined to animals, to cells in dishes, to speculative labs. But the direction of progress is clear. So why are these experiments so important? Because while technology moves forward, humanity is moving backward in one crucial area: reproduction. In most developed countries, birth rates have fallen well below the replacement level of 2.1 children per woman. In Japan, it's closer to 1.2. In South Korea, it has dropped to a stunning 0.7, the lowest in the world. China's population is already shrinking after decades of the one-child policy, and even the United States has seen fertility fall to levels that cannot sustain long-term population growth. The consequences are severe. Aging societies mean fewer workers to support more retirees. Shrinking populations mean empty schools, collapsing economies, and eventually the erosion of national power. Governments have tried everything: subsidies, free childcare, cash bonuses for babies, even campaigns pleading with citizens to start families. But nothing has reversed the trend. Some policymakers are quietly asking the unthinkable. What if people simply stop having children? What if natural reproduction can no longer sustain civilization? Could artificial methods, embryos created in labs, gestated in artificial wombs, one day become not just a medical option, but a social necessity? Already, the genetic tools exist to screen embryos for certain traits. Companies like Orchid Health in the United States offer embryo genome sequencing to predict risk for diseases, and, controversially, even potential for intelligence or height. In China, scientist He Jiankui crossed a line that stunned the world. In 2018, he announced he had used CRISPR gene editing to modify human embryos, creating twin girls who were supposedly resistant to HIV. The international community condemned him, and he was jailed. But the fact remains. He proved it could be done. The barrier had been broken. Combine gene editing with artificial wombs, and suddenly the science fiction visions of designer babies grown in pods don't feel so distant. The technology isn't ready yet, but the blueprint is there. And once such a tool exists, who controls it? Parents? Corporations? Governments? This is where we cross from the realm of hard science into the unexplained. Because long before newspapers wrote about artificial wombs, abductees were describing them. One of the earliest was Betty Andreasson, who in the 1960s described being shown rooms aboard a craft that resembled nurseries, filled with transparent enclosures, each holding a small, fragile being. She said she was told these hybrids were part of a program combining human and non-human DNA. Her story was dismissed by many, but decades later, others reported nearly identical details. In the 1980s and 1990s, the late researcher Bud Hopkins documented thousands of cases. Again and again, abductees described medical procedures focused on reproductive organs. Eggs and sperm were taken. Pregnancies were mysteriously ended, and abductees, often women, reported being shown hybrid infants afterward, children who were presented as their own. David Jacobs, a professor and abduction researcher, went further, arguing that the phenomenon represents a systematic program, an effort to create beings who can live here on Earth among us. Why would another intelligence pursue such a program? One theory suggests that these beings, often described as the Greys, are a dying species. Perhaps they have lost the ability to reproduce naturally. Perhaps their own genetic code has degraded after millennia of cloning. To survive, they need fresh DNA, and humanity is the closest match. By abducting humans, extracting eggs and sperm, and gestating hybrids in artificial chambers, they might be trying to ensure their continuation. The hybrids, then, would not just be experiments. They would be their future. Other theories go further. Some suggest the hybrids are designed not to replace the aliens, but to live here, among us, to merge with humanity slowly, generation by generation, until they are no longer separate. What makes this chilling is how closely it mirrors our own trajectory. Artificial wombs. We are building them now for lambs and mice. Abductees described them decades ago. Genetic editing. We have already modified human embryos. Abductees report genetic experiments performed on them aboard craft. Hybridization. We are talking about reviving extinct animals, such as the dire wolf, by splicing their DNA into living species. Abductees describe hybrids born from human and alien DNA. It's as if our science is slowly catching up to what the phenomenon has already mastered. And here's the unsettling thought. If humanity truly faces a population crisis, if natural reproduction continues to collapse, who will step in to fill the void? Will it be governments using artificial wombs to maintain their populations, corporations selling reproduction as a service, or something else entirely? The abductee testimonies suggest a possibility we don't like to face, that another intelligence has already been running such a program not for decades, but perhaps for centuries. That what we are only now beginning to invent, they perfected long ago. Consider the testimony of Linda Corteil, who in 1989 was reportedly taken from her Manhattan apartment and brought aboard a craft. She described being shown pods containing fetuses, not quite human, not quite alien. She later held a hybrid infant she was told was her child. The bond was undeniable, but the child was taken from her arms. Or consider the words of women interviewed by David Jacobs, who claimed hybrids were brought to them in dimly lit rooms aboard craft. The hybrids were weak, anxious, needing human comfort. Abductees said they were begged to hold them, to show them affection, as if human emotion itself was being grafted onto something that lacked it. These stories are consistent, stretching across decades, continents, and cultures. They are either the most elaborate shared delusion in modern history, or they are a window into something profoundly real. When you look at the arc of this story, the connections are impossible to ignore. Science is building the tools for artificial gestation. Society is facing a fertility collapse that may one day demand those tools. And the UFO phenomenon has, for generations, pointed to a hidden program of hybridization that eerily parallels our own progress. Maybe the headlines about baby pods are just exaggerations. Maybe the labs in Philadelphia and Barcelona will only ever use their inventions to save premature infants. Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe the real story isn't about hospitals and labs at all. Maybe it's about ships in the night sky, silent programs of genetic harvesting, and children born not entirely human. If the reports are true, the future of reproduction may already be here, and it may not belong to us. Now, we want to hear from you. Do you think pregnancy robots and baby pods are just science pushing the limits? Or could they be part of something bigger, maybe even connected to the hybrid programs abductees have described? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'll be reading them. Thanks for joining us here at Unexplained Places on Earth. Our lead researcher and producer, Marcia Chase, is collecting unusual stories and unexplained places as she finishes the ending of her first novel. If you have a great story to tell or unusual place to add to the list, please send us an email. Thanks for watching.